Thank you so much for your time today and in joining CLEAResult for a webinar about home energy assessments, choice, convenience, and control. Just a quick review of the agenda here. We'll go through an introduction and bios of our three speakers. Then we'll get into a little bit of background and situational analysis about what's happening nationally with home energy assessments. And then we'll dive into the first of our three quick topics here with a safe return to the home, in-home and online assessments, guided virtual, and then we'll close up with tying it all together and spend a little bit of time on Q&A. I'd like to introduce our speakers here. Sam Demers is a senior health, safety, and environmental leader with extensive experience in the energy sector, electrical construction, waste recovery, and power generation industries. Harrison Grubbs is our senior director for residential practice lead. And Harrison has been involved in utility energy efficiency programs for the past 15 years and currently works across all of our residential programs to share best practices and optimize our delivery. And Seth Little, our director for virtual delivery. In addition to leading virtual product development and deployment, Seth serves as a subject matter expert to drive innovation for residential and C&I field programs. And a quick nod back to Sam, he is our director of health and safety. And I am Nick Shooter, a senior product marketing manager, and I'll be your moderator. So just a quick background and analysis of what we're seeing out there. So home energy assessments have always been about serving customers where they feel most comfortable. Yet, with many customers still understandably uneasy about allowing strangers into their homes, utilities and trade allies are having to rapidly adapt to meet their needs safely. And historically, our industry isn't reaching the entire addressable market for home assessments. And this can now be made more whole via the addition of non-contact means. So with these three options that we're going to speak about today, virtual, online, and in-home, we're as close as possible to capturing everyone that might want a home energy assessment. But what does it look like for in-person assessments? Safety has come directly to the forefront of the national conversation, and it's absolutely critical that it's job one when it comes to delivering home assessments. We've done a scan of our industry to give some flavor on what our colleagues, clients, and customers are talking about when it comes to home energy assessments. And according to our scans, there's still a significant amount of qualifying homes that could benefit from an assessment, but haven't yet received one. Over half the homes in the US were built before 1980, way before our current energy efficiency standards. And according to a recent report from our colleagues at Green Tech Media, stay-at-home orders have halted many energy audits and retrofits, preventing utilities from spending their program budgets. And at the same time, people losing their jobs and being confined to their homes are consuming more energy, and many are struggling to pay their utility bills. This combination of rising residential demand and faltering household budgets could lead to more pressure on customers. And according to a recent eSource survey of several thousand households, nearly a quarter of North American respondents in that survey had delayed at least one home energy upgrade as a result of COVID-19. But yet, still 20% still plan to move forward with an assessment in 2020. Now I'd like to hand the reins over to Sam Demers to walk us through a safe return to home assessments.
Thank you, Nick. Just a quick sound check if you don't mind.
Sounds great, Sam.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. It's just a great pleasure to have the opportunity to speak to you folks today. Typically, my presentations are internal, so it's a real opportunity to showcase the efforts that we've put in at CLEAResult to safely return our operations to the field. Now, it's been an interesting period, as you are all well aware of, with majority of our field work having halted in the March-April timeframe. Through a great deal of work that we've put in since then, and in particular, over the last 6 weeks, we've been able to resume 75% of our work to the field. And just for perspective, that's about 750 employees on behalf of CLEAResult back in the field, many of whom are working on home energy assessments, as that is our largest kind of go-to program for the business. It's taken a lot of work in conjunction with state requirements, partnering with our utility clients. We're just really proud of how we've been able to move things forward. We're in homes, we're doing it safely, and the most important piece is that we've had 0 employee or customer exposures as a result of us proceeding with the field work. So how did we get here? I'm very proud of the steps that CLEAResult took in the early stages of the pandemic. As a safety professional, managing safety has largely landed on me amongst some leadership peers here at CLEAResult. But with this pandemic, the organization took quick steps to establish a cross-functional task force. We call it our COVID-19 task force. And what this allowed was for me, amongst the other leaders, to have different experts from across our organization collaborating on the best way and the safest way to proceed with our business on delivering energy reduction and savings to our customers and to our clients. Folks from legal, procurement, etc., really across the board participated, and we had some special participation from our program teams that deliver HEA across the organization. We've had tremendous support from our executives, including our CEO, Scott Booth, who is just passionate about safety. He's also a compassionate leader who has just been a really great ally to have throughout this process. So that level of leadership and support has been critical for us to make decisions timely, and in some cases, making those hard decisions that will maybe slowed some work at the onset. We've utilized all the resources that are available to us. CLEAResult is fortunate to have a series of sister organizations, not in this industry, but who are well resourced and who we've been able to lean on to help guide us through this process. And then internally, one of the most critical pieces for us has been communicating to our employees throughout this entire time, changes to our processes, protocols, checking in on employees, surveying them, and just making sure we are keeping everybody up to speed the best we can in this ever-changing environment. So what have we done as a task force and as an organization? We've created a series of what we're called protocols, covering things such as field work, illness protocols, exposure protocols, touching on everything from when you are required to wear a mask, how to sanitize work locations on your way in and out, protocols for how we are going to drive within our vehicles, meaning single-use vehicles versus perhaps in the past we would have had more people. Traveling, we've all but eliminated travel, but we've created some framework for exclusive circumstances. So we've created protocols and process to cover the gamut. But what's really important for this group is to just hear some of the specifics, which are on your screen, of how we're approaching home energy assessments and again, our field work as a whole. The first thing is we're going to continue to do as much as we can do virtually or with zero contact. We have processes we're proud of, but if we can completely eliminate risk, we are certainly going to prefer that route. And you'll hear more about that later in this talk. We do a daily health screening for our employees prior to each field visit. Each day they go into the field and or into one of our offices to scan documents, pick up inventory. We're also screening customers prior to our visits. So this is being led largely by our call centers who schedule appointments, but there's also a step in our process where the individual going to a home will have the discussion with the homeowner prior to entering, just to make sure nothing's changed. During this discussion, we'll talk about social distancing, and we will kind of set some boundaries with the hosting customer on where we'd like them to be when we're in their home. As noted, we have a daily health screening, but that's largely led by our zero tolerance illness policy. Zero tolerance meaning you cannot come to work on behalf of CLEAResult if you're sick at all. And one of the things that we've done as an organization is work with our HR department to adjust a little bit of our policy around that to ensure employees feel comfortable and they're protected should they need to take more sick days than normal, either for themselves or on account of their family. We just don't want employees coming in, and we need to make them feel comfortable making the right decisions. We are strictly, and will continue to strictly follow all CDC and state guidelines to ensure we are keeping up with the latest in terms of regulatory expectations, best practices, and so on. We are, of course, wearing PPE in all the homes we go into. At a minimum, it's masks and gloves, and we continue to encourage and require employees to maintain strong personal hygiene and to sanitize shared equipment, high-touch surfaces when we do go into homes. So how have we gotten here? How have we gotten back into the field? The task force has done a great deal of work. We've created these protocols. We've communicated a ton to employees, but how does that translate into a specific home energy program getting back out into the field? Well, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. And so what we've had to do is establish an approval process. That process had five steps in it, and the process must go through the COVID-19 task force for approval, which I have largely led. Steps for that process are to ensure that we understand state, county, local, provincial laws as it relates to COVID-19 and the associated phases that these locales are in, so we know how that fits within the framework that we've defined. We also need to understand and partner closely with our clients, which we have done a tremendous amount of during this time, to ensure that they are aligned with us, we are aligned with them, and collectively we are aligned with CDC and state guidelines to ensure we are putting our employees back into the field safely and ensuring the safety of our customers while doing that. Prior to approval, I need to understand that our teams have the appropriate PPE and supplies they need to enact our protocols. We required a 1-month supply prior to getting approval for teams to return to the field. Lastly, and the most important piece, is a retraining of all employees on the specifics to their programs. Not just training on CLEAResult protocols, but where there's a overlap or alignment with our clients or a specific state call out, we needed to have a specific training for those groups. So there's been a lot of training happening at CLEAResult. We are very excited of where we are at this point. We are proud of the work we've done as an organization and how we continue to serve our clients and customers, but we're doing so safely, and we're taking care of our employees and their families. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Harrison to take it a little bit further and talking about our in-home and online options.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Harrison Grubbs. Just a quick sound check, Nick or Sam.
Sounds great.
Awesome, thank you. Well, thanks everyone for taking some time to join us today. And first of all, thanks Nick or to Sam for not just for the presentation, but for also your team's leadership over these last couple months. Has been really beneficial to our team as a whole, that we've been able to get back in the field so safely. So what I want to talk through a little bit today is what we see as the evolving world of in-home energy assessments. Just like Sam said, for many of you that are attending this webinar, as well as for us, in-home energy assessments have really been the flagship of what we've offered to our customers and to your customers, over the past year. It is the most intimate, the most thorough type of service we offer. And as everyone on the line is aware right now, it got turned upside down as COVID hit. So what I'm going to try to stress today is that while we all dealt with a lot of challenges around in-home assessments, we still believe, with the proper safety precautions that Sam outlined, we still believe that in-home energy assessments are a critical part of our program delivery for our residential customers, but we don't think it's the only solution. So next slide, please, Linda. So just to level set a little bit on definitions, because I know there are a lot of industry terms that get thrown around and used loosely. So just wanted to define, for the sake of today's conversation, what we're referring to when we talk about an in-home energy assessment. And at the very core, it is an in-person trained energy advisor visiting the customer's home on behalf of our utility clients to provide a variety of recommendations, education, and services. Now, while these vary in scope, based on the client, based upon the regulatory environment, I think there are a couple of fairly core fundamental pieces of a typical home energy assessment. One, it's going to include direct install of energy savings measures. Again, the actual measures may vary, but that's always been a value proposition with in-home services, is being able to capture those savings while on site. And then working with the customer to identify future opportunities for energy savings in their house. And in order to do that, it involves a lot of customer education. Many of the customers we interact with on a daily basis, we find don't know much about how their home consumes energy. So education is certainly a critical part of every home energy assessment. Obviously, we're going to be promoting, any eligible incentives or promotions that customer qualifies for on behalf of their utility. In many programs, we do perform diagnostic testing, whether that's combustion safety or air leakage testing or using infrared cameras. We do a variety of diagnostic and instrumental testing. And then obviously promoting, not just the program that we are there to deliver on behalf of our clients, but promoting the full suite of programs that our clients offer to their customers. So again, the nuances and the specifics may vary from program to program, but I think at the core, these are the fundamental elements of what we think of when we talk about an in-home energy assessment. Next slide, please. So why do we do in-home energy assessments, and how do we determine success from an in-home energy assessment? So I would argue a couple things, rise above all other reasons. One is we're trying to drive that customer to achieve some level of greater energy savings in their homes, whether that's through equipment, through appliances, through shell and envelope measures. The goal of that session is to educate the customer so they are informed and able to make smart decisions that are going to help optimize their energy consumption going forward. I mentioned, certainly being able to install instant savings measures while they're on site. Not only does it bring tremendous benefit to those customers so they can start saving on the day of that appointment, it's also proven a great savings mechanism for many of our utility clients. And then one thing that I think maybe gets overlooked sometime, and this has become more of a focal point, as a lot of our clients are taking more, more guidance from J.D. Power and organizations such as that, is we find that these in-home energy assessment programs really build a positive customer and utility relationship. A relationship that historically has been transactional, that a utility provides power and then a customer pays for that power, and that's usually the extent of the relationship. But this is a way to expand that relationship beyond transactional to actually be a qualitative relationship. Next slide, please. So the value proposition for an in-home energy assessment, I think is pretty clear. I recognize a lot of the names on the, a lot of the attendees today, and most of you are very familiar with a traditional home energy assessment program. But I think just to outline that value proposition, there's that personal connection, that direct touch with the customer. Thoroughness, there is more that we can do in person. We can use our smell. We can use the full periphery of our vision. We can understand the home in such a way from being there that is going to extend beyond any other option. I also feel strongly that the highest savings potential comes from in-home energy assessments because of the aforementioned personal connections and customer service and education. We're able to provide the right information to that customer to get them to act. And obviously for those programs that use diagnostic tools, that certainly requires an in-person exposure to the home in order to use those tools. But that doesn't mean that home energy assessment is a silver bullet that works in every situation. I think we all saw that, during COVID. While the value proposition is really great when it works, I think it's very important that we start to explore all options to make sure we have a diversified approach to gaining residential savings in our programs. And a couple of the challenges, and these are challenges, I didn't even mention COVID up here. These are challenges that we've been facing for a couple of years now, and Seth is going to talk a little bit more about how we have gone down this path. But even prior to COVID, some of the challenges that we faced were customer time commitment. We perform energy assessments in programs that range from 1.5 hours, and sometimes for a full diagnostic, you're talking 4 or 5 or 6 hours. So that's a significant commitment from the customer. Low conversion rates. When I talk about the potential for deep energy savings, we look at nationally, based on what the EPA and the Home Performance with Energy Star tells us, that conversion rates are typically below 50%. So that means 50% of the time when we perform an in-home energy assessment, it's not converting to those deeper savings measures. So that's one of the value propositions that starts to be diminished. And then obviously a high cost to deliver, with that personal touch, with the windshield time, with the one-on-one interaction with customers and the follow-up that's required, it is costly to deliver. Now, in the situations where the savings are obtained, it's certainly more than justified. But when you factor in a low conversion rate, it makes that the overall proposition much more costly to deliver. Next slide, please. So as I was saying, the pressure is on traditional HEAs. We started a task force internally. This is going back about almost a little over a year now, to really try to understand and formulate our plan for the future of HEAs. And while today we're certainly talking a lot about our approach to HEAs in the COVID and post-COVID world, this is all stemming from the task force that we set about on over a year ago, because we know their cost effectiveness pressures. We know that those instant savings measures, which have really helped propel these in-home energy assessment programs, saving measures are disappearing quickly, and in some cases have already disappeared from our programs. In general, we have been, and some of us who've been doing it for a long time, have been delivering home energy assessments essentially the same way for decades. So we know that just like every other industry, we've hit a tipping point of needing to evolve. And I don't believe that any customer experience right now, or any valuable customer experience right now, is based on a one-size-fits-all solution. We need to provide different options to our customers, give them choices, allow us to meet them where it's most valuable and fits their needs the best. And then, as I mentioned with my earlier slide about J.D. Power, we've seen just in the 15 or so years that I've been working on utility energy programs, there has been a considerable shift towards a customer-centric approach, where it's not just about savings, but it's also about customer experience and being able to quantify the value in that way. So a lot of pressure pushing for HEAs to evolve. But like I said earlier, I don't believe this by any means means the end of in-home HEAs. It means we need to start evolving and diversifying our approach. So the first area that I'm going to talk about diversifying our approach is an online energy audit. There are numerous providers out there that are providing online energy audits to customers, and many of you who are on the phone currently use one of those companies to perform online energy audits. And there's certainly a great place within a program portfolio for this. In the context of this conversation and focused on what Sam was telling us, obviously safety is a huge benefit to online energy audits, where it is 100% contactless. An online energy audit is a web-based, self-guided, meaning the customer is going to guide themselves through an energy assessment based upon the prompts and the questions and the data points that the software platform requests from them. And then once they go through that process, the system will generate some level of next steps or recommendations for the customer. So that's a pretty high level definition because I know, every vendor has a slightly different approach or a slightly different value proposition based on their approach. But at least looking industry wide, I think those are the core critical pieces of an online energy audit. Next slide, please. So what is that value proposition? Well, I think the biggest one that should come as no surprise is the convenience. It's flexible. We like to say it's always on. So even when our field staff is unavailable, even when our contact center may be unavailable, an online energy audit is always available. So it truly does align with customer schedules, regardless of what those schedules are. Low cost. Setup, we can all argue about the definition of low cost, but the cost here is born with the setup and the development of the audit tool. But the actual maintenance and running of it is considerably lower cost than rolling trucks to customers' homes day in and day out. If and I've seen that there are varying qualities for sure amongst the online energy audit providers, but the goal is still, just like in an in-home energy assessment, is to position that customer for future savings engagements, right? For future opportunities to improve the savings in their home. And the results are immediate. Let me reframe it. The results to the customer are immediate. At the end of their online energy audit, they usually receive an email with some type of report, some type of next steps, and some type of recommendation to pursue. Great place in the marketplace for online energy audits. Now, are there some challenges? Absolutely. Data is unreliable. Maybe I shouldn't talk about our customers that way, but having done this long enough, there are many customers who don't know if they heat with oil or gas or electric. There are customers who don't know the difference between a boiler and a furnace. So we need to go into this knowing that the data is not going to be at the same level and same correctness as if we had a well-trained energy technician going into the home. So I think we need to understand that as the baseline, that there's going to be some unreliability in the data when you look at it across a large scale. And because of that, a lot of the next steps that come forward as recommendations out of online energy audits, a lot of those are a bit generic, perhaps impersonal, because the software has to, combine the data that the customers present, generated through their own algorithm engines, to try to, extract any anomalies or make corrections, and then produce recommendations. Well, as you go through that process, they're going to have to be made a little bit generic, because the quality of the data going into it is not going to be as robust. And while the timing of these and the convenience of these is really beneficial to customers, it's not that same one-on-one personal experience you would get from an in-home energy assessment. And I think because the next steps tend to be a little bit more generic, a lot of the savings and follow through are low. And let me just clarify that a little bit. The savings and measurement and follow through for deeper savings measures are a little bit low. I actually believe that the unmeasured savings might be a little bit higher, because there are certain things that people may learn from an online energy audit that aren't really quantifiable. A slight change to behavior, something along those lines may actually benefit the customer, but it's really hard to quantify that on the side of the utilities. So next one. So I think just to wrap up before I pass off to Seth, I think what I'm trying to say is that both in-home energy assessments have a great place in a residential portfolio. Online energy assessments have a great place in a residential portfolio. What I think is really interesting, the conversation we're dealing with now with a lot of our clients, is how do you properly calibrate this? So as I mentioned earlier, going back to last July, we developed this task force internally to bring feedback from all of our clients, to bring feedback from our staff, and really make sure that we were going to be at the cutting edge of this evolving home energy assessment. And one of the things that came out of that working session with our team was the agreement to put virtual assessments onto our roadmap. And this was, again, this was back in last July. It got approved through all levels of our organization, and we added it into our roadmap. We assigned a project team, and we started developing this. And then in February, I got a call from my boss at the time, and based on our project timeline, we had about 4 months left to roll out a really robust virtual product. And my boss at the time said, "Harrison, your timeline's gone from 4 months to 4 weeks." And so that's what we did. Next slide, please. So when we did this, similar to my prior conversation, when we talked about this in our task force and put this on our roadmap, it was never to replace in-person assessments. It was to supplement it, to add more diversity to the portfolio, to reach a greater percentage of your customers, and those customers that may not have been the right candidate for a home energy assessment. And so as we did it, we settled on 2 core use cases to really drive our thinking and to drive our development. And that was on the virtual assessment, where we can work directly with the customer, and the customer can use their mobile device to guide us around the home, and we can capture data points, we can capture pictures, and use that to generate the same types of education and reports and recommendations we would do with an in-home energy assessment. And then we also saw a great use case on the virtual assurance side, to using the same technology to perform quality assurance inspections. So in that model, what we've seen really work the best and have the best impact is a scenario where a contractor is wrapping up a job, he's on the job site, he's in the attic, and before he actually packs up his equipment for the day, he calls our staff. We engage in a virtual session using the technology I'm going to talk through here in a couple of minutes. But we would engage in a virtual session, and we perform a quality assurance visit right then and there. So the contractor gets to remedy anything that may not be in accordance with program standards, gets to remedy that while he's still on site. So that means the customer is not inconvenienced with an additional inspection visit. And if things were discovered to be amiss during that inspection visit, the contractor doesn't have to come back for another visit, nor does the customer have to be inconvenienced again. So again, never going to propose that we should do away with all in-person quality assurance inspections, but what we found working most successful is we've actually increased the number of quality assurance inspections we've been doing on our trade allies, because we can do it so much more efficiently using virtual tools. Okay. Next slide, Linda. So let's talk a little bit about what this looks like. I'm going to talk some specifics about the technology itself. So when we went down this path, we had our room full of whiteboards, and we're mapping out, value propositions and what we need to include in our virtual platform. A couple things came front of mind. One was certainly customer privacy, customer comfort, customer choice, customer control. Those were the elements that really resonated as we kicked off the development process. So a couple things I'm going to point out here on these slides. One is, starting on the left-hand side, we generate and implement these sessions with the customer through either a text message or an email. The customer does not have to download an app. They don't have to go through a different process for an iPhone operating system as opposed to an Android operating system. As long as they have a web browser on their mobile device, then we can implement this directly with them. And everything they do when we're engaged with them virtually, everything we do is permission-based. We never want to give the impression that we are tracking more than the customer thinks we're tracking, or we're capturing more information that they may not want us to capture. Everything we do is permission-based. So the customer, right from the initial session or the initial screen where the customer accepts their invitation to join the session, the customer acknowledges terms and conditions and privacy policy. We ask the customer for permission to access their camera and their microphone. And then at the very end, we ask the customer for immediate feedback. So those were just the elements, aside from the technology itself, which gives us great visibility into the customer's homes. We thought that those specific fundamental pieces were going to be critical to ensure that this would work effectively for your customers. All right, next slide, Linda. So here we are today on a GoToWebinar. I know everyone on this line has had their fill of Zoom meetings and Skype meetings and Teams meetings, as have we. And all of those are wonderful platforms and have really saved the day for many of us during the times of COVID. But those platforms are limited in their functionality to meetings or to connecting, grandmothers with their grandchildren, and they work wonderfully for that. As we went down this process, and I think we were a little lucky that we got a head start, we wanted to find a technology platform that was more specific to the relationship between a technician and a customer, not just a meeting. So there aren't too many out there, but we did partner with a company out of Portland, Oregon called Stream, and they're our exclusive partner on delivering this. And they work with companies such as Lowe's and other home improvement big box stores and furniture manufacturers. And we felt like that they had really perfected that customer technician relationship. And some of the features that you see there on, listed on the screen here, which I'm not going to go through all of them, just given the time constraints today. But this is what, in our minds, differentiated our partnership with Stream from, using a so-called over-the-counter meeting software provider. We're not going to have time to do a full-fledged demo today, but certainly if anyone is interested in a demo and actually seeing some of these, these augmented reality enhancements, by all means, reach out afterwards. Next slide, Linda. So I don't think I think it's pretty easy for everyone to understand the value proposition from this type of an approach. We've talked a lot about safety. So even though, as I keep reiterating, we never expect a virtual assessment to replace 100% of the in-home assessments. But if we can reduce our overall driving time, that's going to increase safety. If we can decrease the amount of time we're in customers' homes, that's going to provide some savings, which we can pass on to our clients. We're seeing a lot of our clients aren't just focused on energy savings, but becoming more and more focused on greenhouse gas reductions. And if that's the case, this makes a ton of sense that we can mix in virtual assessments to replace a subset of in-home energy assessments and allow for more capturing of those types of benefits. And next slide, Linda.
I think one of my favorite things to highlight as we talk about being in a virtual space is kind of what are our next steps for virtual. Now that we've moved into a world that includes that approach, and even is seeing that permeate throughout our program designs and our operations. For me, I think the real future of virtual as an additional tool in the toolkit of engaging with customers, particularly in the residential space, is the idea of on-demand energy advising, right? Like, let's be available to solve customer-specific energy problems when they encounter them, right? And I think this is going to be kind of the next level in true customer engagement, and having that connection of expertise to customer in need. We're seeing that now. We've got 3 active pilots where we're supporting smart thermostat installation. We're doing that on a schedule basis, but that idea of taking that to an on-demand space with maybe a centralized virtual team, I think is the real future of engagement in this space, right? And I think that kind of will serve to complete the continuum that Harrison's referenced a couple times, where we start with the ultimate convenience of the online assessment and we take it through the HEA, the digital engagement, and then ultimately that on-demand energy advisor approach. We've got a lot of other use cases we're working on. Again, the idea to be able to reach out into our world from a virtual perspective and engage with energy savings, likely represents a lot of the future of energy efficiency.
Thank you very much, Seth. I'm glad you're back in the saddle here, and thank you, Harrison, for walking through those components as well. So just a quick tying it all together here, just a couple slides, and then we've got some great questions that have come in, so we definitely want to leave a few minutes for those as well. All right, again, so home energy assessments, the toolkit, right? It's not a silver bullet. It's the trifecta, so to speak, of all these delivery channels. And just a quick side-by-side comparison, right, of in-home, as Harrison alluded to, is very personal. Engagement-wise, it results in some of the deeper measures with customers actually moving forward with efficiency measures. It comes at a higher cost to deliver. Online, self-guided audit, always on, as Harrison referred to, relatively low cost, but those inputs, that could be flawed based on some potentially erroneous data that the customer may put in. And guided virtual, finally, again, this is enhancing the customer involvement as they're, taking part of walking through their home with a virtual advisor. Very flexible on-demand capability. And as we'd like to say here in the energy world, engagement now, lower door later. Approaching home energy assessments in the future. Again, we keep kind of hitting on this, right? That there's no silver bullet, but all of these solutions should be a part of your program portfolio. And then you can toggle the demand and role of each to align with overall strategy and goals. And this needs to be truly a seamless customer experience, right? Where it doesn't feel like three separate approaches. For example, sharing data across all these three channels would help in that case. Each approach enables the others. It's truly the bottom line of this is combination of these delivery methods and an agile approach, meaning that you can kind of flex and adapt to delivering this with the customer should enable our utility clients to still engage roughly the same number of customers during these times. And the next slide kind of alludes to that, right? So this is our overall review of our national delivery landscape here. Although we did have over 250,000 combined assessments in 2019 through a variety of different delivery methods, we are down roughly 40% this year from a normal year. We're projected to perform still, though, 150,000 plus assessments in 2020. We're currently operating 75 programs across 20 states, managing over 30,000 active trade allies. And as Sam told us at the top of the show here, 75% of programs have safely returned to the field, including 35 active virtual pilots and nationally involving over 400 trained virtual assessors, which is pretty interesting. Ultimately, though, we are seeing a rebound with digital engagement, safe returns, and our agile approach. So I'd like to thank everyone again for attending, taking part of your day to show up for this home energy assessments conversation and safety conversation with the team here. And on behalf of CLEAResult, thank you very much for showing up. And with that, we'll say goodbye until next time. Thank you again.